Have you ever stayed quiet just to keep the peace, only to find yourself slowly falling apart inside? You swallow your thoughts, shrink your feelings, and smile through the tension. But deep down, something doesn't feel right. There's a silent war happening within you. The more you tolerate, the more you lose touch with who you are. Every time you allow disrespect to slide, you're not avoiding conflict, you're inviting it into your soul. And the cost? Your self-worth, your inner calm, your identity. That's what's at stake when you choose silence over boundaries. We've been conditioned to believe that silence is noble, that turning the other cheek means strength. But there's a difference between staying silent out of wisdom and staying silent out of fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing people who never valued you in the first place. And that fear becomes a cage. You start editing yourself. You start walking on eggshells. You carry the weight of conversations that never happened, and it drains you more than you realize. Let this sink in. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes it's self-betrayal dressed as politeness. You are not weak for feeling uncomfortable around toxic energy. You are not dramatic for wanting to protect your peace. You're not difficult for having standards. But if you keep shrinking every time someone crosses the line, if you keep absorbing the pain instead of addressing it, eventually you'll forget how it feels to stand tall. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to find your voice. That's how toxic cycles survive. Through hesitation, through second guessing, through the hope that maybe next time will be different, but it won't. Not unless you decide to change something. The truth is, the longer you stay silent, the more permission you give. You think they don't notice, but they do. Toxic people don't respect kindness without boundaries. They interpret it as weakness. They test you in small ways, and when you don't push back, they escalate. It's not about one big moment. It's about every moment you allowed something that didn't feel right. That's why the shift begins inside. You don't need to shout. You don't need to argue. You just need to stop accepting what drains you. Because here's the reward waiting for you on the other side. Peace. Real peace. The kind of peace that doesn't depend on who's around you. The kind that comes from knowing you're no longer betraying yourself just to make someone else comfortable. Once you reclaim your voice, even quietly, you start healing. You start choosing yourself again. You start becoming someone who doesn't just survive, someone who rises. Stay with this message until the end, because you're going to learn exactly how to take that one powerful action that will silence the chaos forever. One decision, one shift. And toxic people will never bother you again. Toxic people don't just stumble into your life, they sense something. They sense the space you've left unguarded. The part of you that still wants to be liked, accepted, and understood at all costs. They can feel the hesitation in your boundaries. They feed off the kindness you're afraid to weaponize, and the patience you've mistaken for strength. But what they're really looking for is access. Access to your time, your emotions, your energy. And if you don't close the door, they will walk straight through it, smiling, while slowly robbing you of everything you never knew you were giving away. This is not about being cold. This is about being clear. You can be compassionate without being a target. You can be loving without being used. But if you never draw the line, they will redraw it for you, again and again, until you don't recognize yourself anymore. That's what manipulation does. It doesn't just control your behavior, it rewires your identity. You start to question your memory, your emotions, even your worth. You start believing you're the problem, that maybe you're overreacting, that maybe they're right. But here's the truth they don't want you to realize. If they can make you doubt yourself, they never have to change. This is why awareness is your first weapon. The moment you recognize their pattern is the moment their power starts to weaken. Toxic people rely on your confusion. They survive in your uncertainty. They thrive when you're unsure of what's real and what's not. But clarity cuts through everything. When you see their games for what they are, you stop playing. You stop dancing around their moods. You stop bending your reality just to keep them comfortable. You reclaim your mind, and with it, your strength. It's not your job to fix them. It's not your role to carry their pain. Your purpose is not to be their emotional cushion. The more you try to understand someone who only wants to control you, the more you lose the ability to understand yourself. This is why the most powerful move isn't confrontation. It's detachment. The quiet kind, the firm kind. The kind where you decide, without permission, that you no longer owe them access to your life. And once you make that decision, something shifts. You're no longer available for manipulation. You're no longer interested in their chaos. You're no longer holding space for anyone who doesn't respect yours. This shift starts in your energy. You don't even need to say much. You just need to decide. Decide that your peace is worth protecting. Decide that your worth doesn't need to be proven. Decide that you're done dancing with dysfunction. And in that decision, something powerful happens. Your silence becomes strength, your distance becomes clarity, and your presence becomes a privilege that not everyone gets to keep. They feel it, they know it. And from that moment on, toxic people will think twice before coming near your peace again. The most dangerous thing a toxic person can take from you isn't your time or your energy, it's your clarity. When they confuse you, they control you. They twist your words, question your intentions, and shift the blame until you start second-guessing your reality. That's how they win. Not with force, but with subtle doubt. Not with rage, but with control disguised as concern. And the longer you stay in their grip, the more you begin to forget how it feels to trust yourself. That's why your power lies in one thing: clarity. Not just in what they are, but in what you will no longer allow. Emotional clarity is a weapon. When you stop hoping for change and start seeing patterns, you become immune. When you stop justifying their behavior and start believing your own instincts, you become untouchable. That's when the game ends. Because the game was never about fixing them. It was always about waking up to your own worth. As long as you're focused on them, you're distracted from yourself. But the moment you turn inward, the spell breaks. The fog lifts. You see everything clearly. You see how long you've been walking in circles. And you finally decide to walk away. For good. You don't owe explanations to people who thrive on misunderstanding you. You don't need closure from those who benefit from your confusion. Some things don't need to be fixed, they need to be left. Some conversations don't need to be had, they need to be shut down. You are not here to beg for respect, prove your value, or earn your place in someone else's chaos. You are here to choose peace, and anything that threatens that peace is not worth your attention. Let that be your standard. Start observing, not reacting. Start listening, not defending. Watch how they behave when they don't get a reaction. That's when their mask slips. That's when you see who they really are, not who they pretend to be when things are going their way. And when that moment comes, stand still. Don't chase, don't argue, don't explain. Because silence backed by self-respect speaks louder than any words. You are not the same person they once manipulated. You're not confused anymore. You're awake now. And once you're awake, you cannot unsee. That's when they begin to feel it. The distance, the disconnection, the power shift. They sense that you're no longer accessible, no longer soft to their games. And in that silence, you've said everything. You've said, I know who I am now. You've said this energy is no longer welcome. You've said, I choose me every time. And that is the most powerful message you can send without ever speaking a word. Your peace is no longer up for negotiation. And once you make that known, even the loudest manipulators fall silent. Because they know your clarity is no longer something they can reach. When you stop responding to chaos, it begins to starve. Toxic people thrive on reaction. They feed off your frustration, your confusion, your attempts to explain yourself. They want you defensive, emotional, off balance, because the moment you lose your center, they regain control. That's why the greatest shift happens not when you fight back, but when you stop participating, when you refuse to play the role they cast you in, when you choose calm over chaos, detachment over drama, self-respect over being understood. That's the moment you take your power back. Quietly, completely, and without asking permission. You are not here to be emotionally available to everyone. Not everyone deserves your energy, your thoughts, your presence. Your peace is a gift, not a default. It's something you protect, not something you give away to those who misuse it. You don't need to justify your silence. You don't need to prove that you're right. Sometimes walking away is the loudest truth you'll ever speak, and it will echo. Because the absence of your reaction will expose everything about their intentions. It will reveal what their words couldn't hide and what their manipulation tried to bury. Truth always surfaces when the noise dies down. There comes a moment when you stop needing closure and start creating it. You stop asking why they acted the way they did. You stop wondering what you could have done differently. And you realize the only thing that ever needed to change was the amount of space you gave to what hurt you. Letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's knowing the difference between what can be healed and what must be released. It's refusing to carry the weight of other people's brokenness when they refuse to take responsibility for it. The freedom you seek isn't in getting the last word. It's in no longer needing it. It's in the stillness that comes when you stop chasing understanding and start choosing alignment. Alignment with who you really are, what you really deserve, and how you really want to feel. You deserve to wake up without dread. You deserve to exist without walking on emotional eggshells. You deserve relationships that feel like safety, not survival. But none of that is possible until you decide that peace matters more than approval. You're not cold for choosing distance. You're not heartless for choosing peace. You're healing. And healing sometimes looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like walking away without looking back. Sometimes it looks like no longer explaining who you are to those committed to misunderstanding you. You are not obligated to carry what was never yours to hold. So let go of their expectations. Let go of their control. Let go of the need to be the one who always forgives, always explains, always stays. You've done enough. You've felt enough. Now it's time to rise. Not by force, or not by argument, but by simply refusing to shrink any longer. This is how you make sure toxic people never find a home in your peace again. There is a moment when you finally feel it, the shift. The weight begins to lift, not because the world changed, but because you stopped caring what wasn't yours. You stopped entertaining conversations that led nowhere. You stopped seeking validation from people who only valued you when you were small. And in that space, in that stillness, you begin to reclaim yourself. Not the version you had to become to survive them, but the version you lost. The one that speaks with clarity, moves with confidence, and chooses peace like its oxygen. Because once you taste peace, chaos loses its appeal forever. You start to see that not every invitation deserves a response. Not every insult needs correction. Not every energy requires your attention. When you withhold your reaction, you reclaim your dignity. You choose stillness over struggle. You refuse to trade your peace for petty validation. And in that refusal, you rise. You rise above games. You rise above manipulation. You rise above the constant need to explain your heart to those who were never listening. That's what strength looks like. Not loud, not angry, but steady, silent, unshakable. The truth is, when someone loses access to your peace, they panic because they never expected you to change. They thought you'd stay soft, stay forgiving, stay stuck. They relied on your guilt to keep you compliant. They mistook your empathy for weakness. But you've outgrown that version of yourself. The one who tolerated pain just to be polite. The one who shrank to keep others comfortable. That version served a purpose once, but now it's time to let it go. Because staying small is not your purpose. Pleasing everyone is not your purpose. Living in survival mode is not your purpose. Freedom is. You were not meant to constantly explain yourself. You were not created to be a dumping ground for other people's anger, insecurity, or blame. You are allowed to be unavailable. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to make decisions that confuse others but liberate your soul. And you don't need to apologize for it. Growth sometimes looks like silence. Healing sometimes looks like walking away. And strength sometimes looks like finally saying, enough. From now on, let your energy speak louder than your words. Let your peace set the tone for every interaction. Let your silence deliver the message they were never willing to hear. You don't have to convince anyone. You don't have to fix what you didn't break. You just have to remember who you are and act like it. Because the version of you that chooses peace, clarity, and self-respect will never be compatible with chaos again. That version doesn't argue, doesn't chase, doesn't prove. That version knows real power is quiet. Real boundaries don't need permission. And once you stand in that truth, toxic people will feel the change and know they can't reach you anymore. The moment you choose not to engage is the moment you start to win. Not because you defeated them, but because you refuse to let them drag you back into the version of yourself that tolerated disrespect. That version of you is gone now. The one that stayed silent to keep peace, that smiled through discomfort, that waited for people to change. You've outgrown the need to explain your boundaries. You've realized that people who truly respect you won't need a warning to treat you right. And the ones who don't, they're no longer your concern. Their approval is no longer your currency. You begin to notice how powerful you become when your attention is no longer scattered, when your emotions are no longer hijacked, when your mind is no longer cluttered with what they think, what they feel, what they want. Suddenly you can breathe. You can focus. You can feel yourself again. Because clarity comes when confusion leaves. And confusion always leaves when you stop trying to please people who thrive on your discomfort. You don't owe them your softness. You don't owe them your peace. You owe yourself freedom from the emotional war they never intended to stop fighting. What you're doing now isn't selfish, it's sacred. It's an act of self-respect. It's saying, I'm not available for pain that disguises itself as love. It's declaring, I don't negotiate with anyone who benefits from my silence. This isn't bitterness. This is clarity. It's realizing that not everyone deserves a seat at your table just because they asked. You can love people from a distance. You can forgive without reconnecting. You can move on without bitterness. Because you're not walking away to punish them. You're walking away to protect your peace, your purpose, your potential. You are the gatekeeper of your energy. You decide what enters. You decide what stays. And you decide what must be removed. The more you honor your peace, the more your life begins to reflect it. Toxic people feel it instantly. They sense the energetic wall, the emotional detachment, the absence of the old version of you they used to manipulate. And they'll try to bait you, guilt you, provoke you. But when you don't flinch, when you don't react, when you don't need to be right, they lose access. Not just to your time, but to your power. And that's when the cycle ends. You've spent enough of your life trying to fix what wasn't yours to heal. You've given enough energy to people who mistook kindness for permission. Now is the time to protect what's sacred. Your mind, your peace, your growth. Every time you stay silent in the face of chaos, you rise. Every time you choose peace over panic, you win. Every time you refuse to be pulled into dysfunction, you strengthen your spirit. This is how you become untouchable. Not by fighting back, but by elevating so high that the things that used to break you can no longer find you. You are not difficult for demanding respect. You are not too much for protecting your energy. You are simply becoming unavailable for what once drained you. Growth isn't loud, it's quiet, firm, and rooted in the deep understanding that your peace is not up for negotiation. The people who once had access to your emotions, your mind, your time, begin to notice that something's different. You're no longer jumping at every call, no longer bending to every expectation, no longer explaining yourself to those who never valued your truth. That's not arrogance, that's healing, that's alignment, that's stepping into who you really are. There is a kind of strength that doesn't show up in confrontation, it shows up in restraint. It shows up when you know you could respond, but you choose not to. Not because you're afraid, but because you've risen beyond the need for chaos. The more you rise, the less accessible you become to people who only thrive when you're uncertain. They'll say you've changed, they'll say you've grown cold, but they won't say how often they dismissed your voice, how often they twisted your kindness, how often they relied on your silence. They won't say how much they needed your confusion to feel powerful. Let them say what they will. Let them misunderstand you. Your job is not to be digestible to those committed to seeing you as the problem. Your job is to grow, to evolve, to protect your peace so fiercely that anyone who threatens it is met with distance, not explanation. Because you've learned now, not everyone who comes close deserves access. Not everyone who speaks deserves a response. Not everyone who stays deserves your loyalty. Loyalty to yourself must always come first. Anything less is self-abandonment disguised as love. You were never made to be someone else's emotional anchor. You were never meant to hold together what someone else refuses to fix within themselves. You are allowed to say, I'm done. You are allowed to say, this isn't mine to carry. You are allowed to walk away, even if no one understands. Especially if no one understands. Because the people who get it, the ones who truly see you, they'll never demand that you shrink to stay. They'll never ask you to betray yourself to make them comfortable. And the ones who do, you already know what they fear. They fear the version of you that's no longer trapped in their grip. That version of you is here now, clear, centered, calm. You no longer seek to be liked. You seek to be free. And in that freedom, you discover a truth that toxic people can never touch. When you value yourself deeply, nothing shallow can shake you. Not their blame, not their silence, not their disappointment. You've already chosen something greater. You've chosen your peace. And once you've made that choice, no one can take it from you unless you hand it back. But now you know better. Now you choose you. Every time. Your peace doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It doesn't need to be explained, defended, or proven. It simply needs to be honored. Because once you begin honoring it, everything starts to shift. You no longer chase conversations that leave you empty. You no longer crave validation from those who can't even validate themselves. You stop needing to win battles that were designed to keep you stuck. That stillness you're choosing now? That's power. That's self-mastery. That's what it means to finally take command of your life, your emotions, your direction, without anyone's permission. You begin to realize that walking away is not weakness. It is wisdom gained through suffering. It is strength shaped through disappointment. It is clarity born from pain. And that clarity is what allows you to stop making excuses for people who never showed up when you needed them. You stop defending the patterns that hurt you. You stop normalizing behavior that chips away at your worth. You look at it for what it is. You face the truth. And even though it's uncomfortable, you walk forward anyway, because comfort never healed anyone. Only truth does. When you stop begging to be heard, you start listening to yourself. You hear the parts of you that have been whispering all along. The tired part, the hurt part, the forgotten part. You no longer silence your own needs to keep someone else satisfied. You no longer ignore your intuition just to maintain appearances. You finally trust yourself. You trust the silence. You trust the feeling that tells you this isn't for me, and you act on it. Not out of fear, but out of power. Because real strength is not found in how much you can endure. It's found in how quickly you recognize what no longer deserves your endurance. You begin setting boundaries that aren't just spoken but lived. You become someone who doesn't just talk about self-respect, you embody it. And that embodiment becomes a filter. It repels what drains you. It protects what builds you. People who thrived on your emotional availability begin to disappear. Not because you've changed the rules, but because you've finally enforced them. And the ones who stay, they rise with you. Because true connection doesn't resist growth, it demands it. Your peace becomes your priority. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because you finally understand the cost of ignoring it. You've seen what it looks like to give everything and be left empty. You've felt what it's like to be surrounded yet unseen. And now you've decided, never again. You choose depth over noise, healing over habit, freedom over familiarity. You choose yourself, not the wounded version, not the fearful version, but the empowered one. The version that doesn't beg, doesn't shrink, doesn't settle. The version that knows peace isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. And once you do, no toxic voice, no manipulative tactic, no guilt-tripping silence can take it from you. Because you no longer belong to their chaos, you belong to your healing. Let them say you've become distant. Let them whisper that you've changed. Because you have. You've outgrown environments that kept you small. You've evolved past conversations that lacked depth and relationships that thrived on your silence. You no longer carry the guilt of choosing yourself. You no longer mistake tolerance for loyalty. What once felt normal now feels unbearable, and that's how you know you're healing. You're finally recognizing what your soul has always known. Peace is not a luxury, it's a standard. And the people who can't meet you there were never meant to stay. There's a quiet kind of power in not reacting, in letting someone else's chaos remain theirs, in choosing to observe without absorbing. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to prove anything. You don't even have to explain why you're unavailable. Growth doesn't seek validation, it simply exists. It radiates, it protects, it builds walls where there used to be open doors. Not to shut people out, but to guard the space you've bled to rebuild. That space is sacred now, that peace is earned, and anyone who approaches it must rise to meet it, not drag it down. You stop asking why they treated you that way. You stop replaying their words in your head. You stop waiting for closure from people who were never open in the first place. Instead, you give yourself permission to close the chapter, to burn the bridge if necessary, to move forward without bitterness but with brutal clarity. You've learned that love isn't proven by suffering, that your worth doesn't increase with your silence. That being the bigger person doesn't mean being the bleeding one. You rise not because they changed, but because you refuse to stay the same. This isn't just about walking away. It's about walking into the version of yourself that knows her value. That version that sees manipulation for what it is. That version that won't answer to guilt, shame, or fear. You don't belong in the cycles that broke you. You belong in the spaces that restore you, where peace is normal, where joy is present, where your presence is appreciated without needing to earn it. That's the new standard. That's the new rhythm. One built not on survival but on strength, not on appeasing others but on honoring yourself. Every moment you don't respond to drama, you rise. Every time you withhold your energy from dysfunction, you heal. Every decision to protect your peace becomes a declaration of self-respect. And when that becomes your foundation, toxic people lose all control. Because their power only existed where your boundaries were weak. Now they're solid, now they're sharp, now they're non-negotiable. You no longer available for anything less than what aligns with your growth. You don't need their apology. You don't need their permission. You only need the truth you now live by. You are enough. And you don't owe your peace to anyone who hasn't earned the right to keep it intact. The power to protect your peace lies within you, waiting to be claimed. It's not about who can hurt you the least. It's about who deserves your heart, your time, your energy. This power does not come from external validation, but from the fierce love you cultivate for yourself. When you understand this, you no longer bend to toxic demands or toxic expectations. You stand tall in the truth that your worth is not negotiable. Toxic people feed on confusion, guilt, and chaos. Yet when you are grounded, clear, and unshakable, their power fades. They are forced to retreat because your peace is a fortress, impenetrable and unwavering. You must become relentless in guarding this sanctuary. Your boundaries are not walls built to isolate, they are shields crafted to preserve what is sacred within you. Each time you say no to the drama, no to the manipulation, no to the draining conversations, you are reinforcing your fortress. This is not an act of selfishness, it is the highest form of self-respect. You are saying to yourself and to the world, I matter, I am worthy. I choose peace over pain, freedom over fear, growth over stagnation. This commitment is what changes everything. It shifts your energy from victimhood to victory, from silence to strength. Toxic people will try to test your limits. They will push and prod, attempting to break your resolve. But every time you hold firm, you teach yourself a lesson deeper than words can express. You teach yourself that you are in control. Control over your emotions, your reactions, your life. No one has the right to dictate how you feel or how you respond unless you allow it. The moment you claim this control, you disarm the toxicity. You rob it of its fuel. The need to control you dies because you no longer respond in the way it expects. Your power grows because you are no longer a source of their chaos. You are a force of your own peace. Let go of the need to explain your boundaries to those who refuse to respect them. You owe no one justification for prioritizing your well-being. Real strength lies in silent boundaries, not in arguments or confrontations. When you hold your space quietly, confidently, and consistently, you communicate a message louder than any words. You say, I am done being available to toxicity. I am done sacrificing my peace for the approval of others. I am done being drained by those who never cared enough to protect me. This message is powerful. It is liberating. It is transformational. When you fully embrace this truth, your life begins to reflect it. You attract connections that honor your boundaries, that respect your peace, that value your presence. The toxic lose their grip, replaced by relationships that nurture, uplift, and support your growth. This is not a dream, it is a choice, a daily practice, a declaration of self-love that changes everything. Your peace is your power. Guard it fiercely, protect it relentlessly, and watch how your life transforms beyond what you once thought possible. True freedom begins when you no longer seek permission to protect your peace. It begins when you accept that your well-being is your responsibility and that it is not negotiable. This freedom is not given by others, it is claimed by you. In every decision you make, in every boundary you set, in every moment you refuse to let toxic energy invade your mind and soul. Freedom comes from understanding that your peace is a non-negotiable asset, and once you guard it fiercely, no one can steal it away. It is your sanctuary, your strength, and no external force has the power to break through unless you allow it. You must stop waiting for people who thrive on chaos to change or understand your value. They won't. Your energy is not meant to fix them or convince them. It is meant to nurture you. When you fully grasp this, you stop carrying the weight of their dysfunction. You stop being the emotional punching bag or the safety net they abuse. Instead, you become the master of your emotional landscape. You decide what you allow to touch your heart and what you let bounce off the shield you have built. This shield is forged from self-respect, clarity, and unshakable boundaries. It's not a wall to keep love out. It's a gatekeeper ensuring that only what uplifts, heals, and grows is welcomed in. You will feel moments of doubt, moments when the temptation to revert to old patterns creeps in, when the fear of loneliness or rejection whispers lies in your ear. This is where your true strength is tested, not by the toxicity around you, but by the voice within that questions if you are worthy of peace. That voice is the echo of past conditioning, but it no longer defines you. Every time you choose your peace over approval, you silence that voice a little more. Every time you hold firm to your boundaries, you teach yourself that love does not require sacrifice of self. You learn that true connection flourishes in respect and mutual care, not in control or manipulation. The path to peace is not easy. It demands courage to walk away even when it hurts. It demands patience to rebuild trust in yourself when it's been shattered. It demands unwavering faith that the best version of your life is waiting on the other side of discomfort. But with every step forward, you grow stronger. You reclaim pieces of yourself lost in toxic exchanges. You reconnect with your power that was always there but hidden beneath the noise of others' demands. This journey is about becoming your own protector, your own advocate, and your own source of love and validation. When you stand in this truth, the world around you shifts. Toxic people no longer hold sway over your emotions or decisions. You become magnetic to authenticity and kindness, and repellent to drama and deceit. Your peace is your compass, your guide, and your fortress. Protect it fiercely, live it boldly, and know that by doing so, you not only change your life, you change everything that touches it. You hold within you an untapped reservoir of strength that has been waiting for this moment to rise. It is not born from external victories or approval, but from the quiet, steady decision to protect your inner world. Each time you resist the pull of toxic people, you claim more of that strength. It grows with every boundary you set, every moment you choose peace over pain, every time you refuse to be dragged into negativity. This strength is the foundation of your transformation, the force that moves you beyond fear, doubt, and old patterns. It is your truth, waiting to be unleashed with full power. The process of shutting out toxicity is not about anger or revenge. It is about reclaiming your life. Toxic people thrive on your emotional reactions. They feed on your energy. When you stop giving it to them, they lose their grip. You become untouchable because your emotions are no longer weapons in their hands. Instead, you wield them as tools of empowerment. You learn to respond with calmness, clarity, and confidence. You no longer allow yourself to be the battlefield where their conflicts play out. This shift changes everything. It rewires your brain to prioritize your well-being over toxic approval and frees you from emotional exhaustion. Know that the urge to explain yourself, to justify your decisions to those who refuse to respect them, is a trap. It is a tactic designed to keep you entangled in confusion and self-doubt. When you recognize this, you stop defending your boundaries and start honoring them unapologetically. Silence becomes your most powerful response. It communicates more than words ever could. It says, I value myself enough to walk away from anything that threatens my peace. You are not responsible for convincing others of your worth. That is a burden you do not need to carry. Your responsibility is to protect your peace and nurture your growth. This inner fortitude becomes a beacon that draws in the right people, those who respect you, support you, and elevate your life. It repels those who drain your energy and disrupt your harmony. Your world shifts from chaos to calm, from doubt to certainty. This shift is the reward for your courage, your patience, and your unwavering commitment to yourself. It is the life you deserve, one built on respect, love, and genuine connection. You have the power to create this life, starting now. Remember, the most important relationship you will ever have is with yourself. When you honor your worth, protect your peace, and refuse to settle for toxicity, you set a new standard, not just for others, but for yourself. You teach yourself how to be loved, respected, and valued. This is the foundation of true freedom. This is where transformation begins. Embrace it with open arms, knowing that your peace is your power, your shield, and your sanctuary. Guard it fiercely and live boldly in its light. The moment you decide to protect your peace, you step into a power that is rare and unstoppable. It is a power that does not rely on others' approval or validation, but springs from an unbreakable connection to yourself. Toxic people thrive on chaos because chaos feeds their control. When you choose peace instead, you break that cycle. You become the calm in the storm. This calm is your greatest weapon, your fiercest shield. It says without words that you will no longer be a casualty of their toxicity. You will not be dragged into their drama or weighed down by their negativity. Your energy is sacred, and you will defend it with every fiber of your being. Let go of the idea that you must tolerate bad behavior out of loyalty, love, or obligation. Toxicity wears many masks, often disguised as care or concern, but underneath lies manipulation, disrespect, and harm. Recognizing this is a form of radical self-love. It is choosing yourself over the false narratives that have kept you trapped. This choice does not make you selfish, it makes you wise. It sets a precedent for how others should treat you. When you refuse to accept anything less than respect and kindness, you send a clear message that you value your life and your mental health above all else. You will face resistance, not only from toxic individuals, but from within yourself. Old fears, doubts, and insecurities will rise to challenge your resolve. You might question whether you are overreacting or worry about being alone. These feelings are normal, but they are not your truth. Your truth is that you deserve peace. You deserve relationships that nurture and uplift you, not ones that drain or diminish your spirit. Trusting this truth requires courage, but it also brings immense freedom. Freedom from confusion, chaos, and emotional exhaustion. Freedom to rebuild your life on your terms. Remember that setting boundaries is not a one-time event, but a continuous practice. Each day you reaffirm your limits, you strengthen your sense of self and your control over your environment. Boundaries create space for healing and growth. They allow you to focus on what truly matters, your goals, your happiness, your well-being. When you honor your boundaries, you make room for positive energy, genuine connections, and personal fulfillment. This process transforms your life from a battlefield into a sanctuary. Your peace is not negotiable. It is the foundation upon which every positive change will stand. When you protect it fiercely, you become a magnet for what aligns with your highest good. Toxic people will no longer have access to your mind or heart. They will be unable to shake your confidence or diminish your light. This is the power that comes from choosing yourself every single day. Embrace it, own it, and let it guide you toward a life of true freedom and unstoppable strength. The clarity you seek begins with a single decision. A decision to no longer tolerate anything that disrupts your peace. Toxic people thrive in confusion and chaos because it keeps you uncertain, vulnerable, and easier to control. When you choose clarity, you cut through the fog of manipulation and lies. You see people and situations as they truly are, not as you wish them to be. This truth is your greatest ally. It empowers you to act decisively and confidently, refusing to let toxic influences dictate your emotions or actions. Clarity is a form of self-respect, a declaration that your well-being is non-negotiable. This clarity also frees you from the exhausting cycle of trying to fix, explain, or change others. It shifts your focus inward, toward what you can control, your mindset, your reactions, and your boundaries. You begin to understand that the only power toxic people have over you is the power you give them. Once you reclaim that power, you become unstoppable. Your peace is no longer fragile. It is fortified by your unwavering commitment to protect it. You stop carrying the weight of other people's negativity and start walking lighter, breathing freer. Understanding your worth in this way is transformational. It rewires your brain to prioritize your emotional health and self-care. Your self-talk becomes kinder, your decisions sharper. You learn to say no without guilt and yes only to what serves your highest good. This shift does not happen overnight, but every moment you choose peace over pain, you grow stronger. You cultivate a mindset that attracts positivity and repels toxicity naturally. This is not luck, it is the direct result of your inner work and resilience. The power of clarity also allows you to rebuild relationships with healthier boundaries. You no longer tolerate disrespect or manipulation. You hold others accountable without anger or fear. You communicate your needs clearly and assertively. This transforms your connections, creating space for authenticity and mutual respect. When toxic people push back, you recognize it as resistance to change, not a reflection of your value. This awareness protects your confidence and fuels your resolve. At the core of this transformation is the simple but profound truth that you are worthy of peace, respect, and love. You deserve relationships that uplift and empower, not those that drain and destroy. This truth is a light in the darkest moments, a guide when temptation to revert to old patterns arises. Hold on to it fiercely. Let it remind you that every boundary you set, every step you take away from toxicity, is a victory. Each victory rewires your brain for freedom and strength, paving the way for a life that reflects your highest potential. Your peace is your power. Clarity is your armor. Together, they create an unbreakable fortress around your mind and heart. Within this fortress, you are free to grow, to dream, and to live boldly. Toxic people lose their power because you have reclaimed yours. This is not just survival, it is your rebirth. Embrace it fully and move forward with courage and conviction. Your life will never be the same again. When you claim your power by setting clear boundaries, something inside you shifts. You stop being a passive participant in your own life. Instead, you become the architect of your experience. Boundaries are not walls to isolate you, but bridges to healthier, more authentic relationships. They tell the world exactly what you will and will not accept. This simple act of defining your limits sends a powerful message, not only to others but also to yourself. It tells your mind that your peace and dignity are priorities. When you guard these fiercely, you create space for growth and joy. You deserve this space, and you have every right to claim it. The strength to enforce boundaries comes from deep self-awareness. It requires understanding your triggers, recognizing patterns of toxic behavior, and refusing to allow them into your emotional sphere. This is not weakness, it is the ultimate strength. It takes courage to say no when others expect compliance, to walk away when everyone else stays. Toxic people will test these limits relentlessly, because they are used to controlling through chaos and confusion. But your clarity is your shield. The more consistent you are, the less power they hold. Your resolve becomes an unbreakable force that no manipulation can erode. This is the moment when true freedom begins. Freedom from the mental drain of constantly explaining yourself. Freedom from the anxiety of walking on eggshells. Freedom from the pain of being misunderstood or mistreated. You start to realize that your energy is precious and limited. Every second spent on toxic relationships is a second stolen from your potential, your happiness, your future. This awareness ignites a fierce protectiveness over your time and emotions. You begin to invest only in what nourishes your soul. The toxic voices become background noise, irrelevant and powerless. Your mindset shifts from victimhood to victory. You no longer see toxic people as an inevitable part of life to endure, but as obstacles you can overcome. This mental shift changes everything. It rewires your brain to seek solutions, to act with intention, and to prioritize your well-being. You stop reacting emotionally and start responding strategically. This strategic response dismantles the toxic cycle. It replaces chaos with control, confusion with clarity, and pain with peace. This is the transformation that rewires your future and fortifies your spirit. The journey to this point requires patience and persistence. You will face moments of doubt, guilt, and loneliness. These are tests of your commitment to yourself. Each time you stand firm, you build resilience. Each boundary you uphold strengthens your emotional muscles. This is how you reclaim your life piece by piece, moment by moment. Your peace is not fragile. It is forged in the fires of these challenges. You become someone who no longer just survives toxicity but rises above it, empowered and unshakable. Your emotional freedom is a gift you give yourself every day. It is a declaration that you will not be anyone's emotional punching bag. It is the promise that you will honor your worth and protect your peace at all costs. This freedom is contagious. It inspires others to seek the same strength within themselves. The power to break free from toxic people is not hidden or elusive. It is inside you right now, waiting for your command. Claim it boldly, protect it fiercely, and live your life on your terms. This is your awakening, your moment of true power and peace. Your emotional boundaries become the strongest armor you will ever wear. When you decide that your peace is non-negotiable, the energy around you changes. Toxic people thrive on confusion, on blurred lines, on access to your vulnerability. But when you become unyielding, when your boundaries are clear and immovable, they encounter a force they cannot penetrate. This resistance unsettles them because it threatens their control. You are no longer a source of their power. You become a challenge they cannot overcome. This shift is not just external. It rewires your internal world. You begin to trust yourself more deeply, to honor your intuition, and to reject anything that threatens your growth or joy. Recognize that the need to protect your emotional space is not selfish, it is essential. Self-care is not a luxury but a necessity for anyone who wants to live fully and authentically. Toxic people drain your vitality because they feed off your energy without giving anything back. They leave you depleted, doubting yourself, and questioning your worth. Refusing to let them invade your mental and emotional space is the most profound form of self-respect. It is the statement that your life, your happiness, and your mental health matter above all else. When you guard your peace with vigilance, you create an environment where your mind can heal, your spirit can flourish, and your dreams can grow unhindered. Understanding the psychology behind toxic behavior empowers you to respond with clarity instead of confusion. Toxic individuals often use manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional blackmail to keep you entangled, but once you know these tactics for what they are, they lose their power. Awareness strips toxicity of its mystery and exposes it for the unhealthy behavior it is. This knowledge arms you with the ability to respond calmly and decisively, rather than react impulsively. Your response is your power. It sets the tone for how others treat you. When you respond from a place of strength and certainty, toxic people have no choice but to back off or fade away. Every time you enforce your boundaries, you reinforce a new pattern in your life. Your brain learns that your peace is worth defending. This rewiring makes you more resilient to future toxicity. It strengthens your emotional immune system, so to speak. Over time, what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. Your emotional reactions become more measured, and your decisions more aligned with your true self. This transformation is the foundation of lasting freedom. It is the internal work that creates external change. You become someone who naturally attracts respect and positive energy, while toxic influences lose their foothold. This process demands commitment and courage. It requires you to face discomfort, to say no when it feels easier to say yes, and to walk away when it feels safer to stay. But each act of courage builds momentum. Each boundary you uphold reinforces your identity as a person who values themselves and their peace above all else. This momentum becomes unstoppable. It propels you toward a life where toxic people have no place. You are no longer defined by their actions or opinions. Instead, you are defined by your unwavering commitment to yourself and your well-being. Claim this power today. Decide that your peace is not negotiable. Let this decision guide every interaction, every choice, and every boundary you set. Know that when you protect your emotional space fiercely and consistently, toxic people will no longer bother you. They will lose interest because their tactics no longer work. Your life will fill with calm, clarity, and strength. This is your birthright. Your freedom to live without toxicity and thrive in your truth. Embrace it fully and watch your world transform. The power to reclaim your life from toxic influences lies in one profound truth. You have control over what you allow into your mind and heart. This control is not about controlling others, but mastering yourself. Toxic people often invade because you have unknowingly given them permission. This permission is not always spoken out loud. Sometimes it's silent acceptance, hesitation to confront, or fear of standing alone. But as soon as you recognize that your permission is the gateway, the key to stopping toxicity becomes clear. Withdraw it completely. When you refuse to give toxic people access, their grip loosens. The more you practice this, the stronger your inner fortress becomes. The energy you save from not engaging in toxic exchanges fuels your growth and healing. Your mind becomes a sanctuary instead of a battleground. Imagine how life shifts when you no longer spend mental energy trying to explain yourself or defend your worth to people who thrive on chaos and negativity. Toxic people feed off your confusion and emotional reactions. They rely on your willingness to engage, to argue, to justify. When you choose silence, when you stop giving them the response they crave, you disrupt their cycle of manipulation. This silence is not weakness, it is power. It is a statement that you will not be drawn into their drama. When they realize their tactics fail to provoke you, they lose interest. Your calm becomes their deterrent. This calm is not born from ignorance or avoidance, but from profound self-mastery. Taking back control also means redefining your relationship with yourself. Toxic people often distort your perception of your value. They plant seeds of doubt, guilt, and inadequacy. But when you hold the reins of your own mind firmly, you can uproot these lies. Affirm your worth daily. Remind yourself that your feelings matter and your boundaries are sacred. You are not responsible for other people's toxicity, nor are you obligated to tolerate it. Protecting your mental and emotional space is an act of courage and self-love. It rewires your brain to prioritize your well-being over the approval of others. This shift builds resilience that becomes impenetrable. Embracing this power requires commitment. It demands consistent choices to refuse negativity